Good morning, everyone. We are now recording. If you agree to the recording, please type yes. If you don't agree to being recorded, I'm afraid I will have to ask you to leave now because this is going to be... Okay, great, lovely, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to all, and it is a great pleasure for me to introduce our first speakers at this great conference. And they are Johanna Panthier, I hope I am pronouncing this correctly, from France, or Panthier, perhaps, who is an administrator in the language policy unit of the Council of Europe in Strasbourg, France. And she's responsible for the CFR and all related documents and tools as part of an overarching program including all languages in and for education. And Susanna Slivensky from Austria, who has been working for the Council of Europe since 2005 as Deputy Director and Head Programs of the ECML. Susanna Slivensky has a doctoral degree in language education and a master's degree in German as a foreign language, Japanese studies, and organizational psychology, in addition to almost 2 decades of experience in language teaching and I suppose in the working for the Council of Europe. She and Mrs. Panthier and Mrs. Slivensky will be talking one after the other, and we will have time for questions from the audience later. So I shall remove myself from the screen, from video, and Mrs. Panthier perhaps, and leave Susanna on her own to begin her presentation. Okay, so it's Miss Panthier first. Sorry, it's Miss Panthier first. So we are on the layout for Miss Panthier, and Susanna, would you please mute your webcam and voice for Miss Panthier to begin?
So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know where you are, all of you. I am here in Strasbourg, in France, speaking from the Council of Europe. And good morning to Heike and Josh. And thank you for organizing this conference and for inviting the Council of Europe to participate. The CFR being a publication, a book indeed, of the Council of Europe, we are indeed very happy with this opportunity to clarify a number of things about this framework, which is at the same time quite famous and quite unknown. But before speaking of the CFR itself, allow me to say a few words about the Council of Europe in order to situate the framework and the broader context of this European organization, its aims and objectives. The Council of Europe was founded in 1949, 4 years after the Second World War. It has 47 member states, 28 of which are also members of the European Union. It has its headquarters symbolically in Strasbourg, a beautiful city on the French-German border. Strasbourg is also the seat of the European Parliament, which belongs to the European Union and not to the Council of Europe. To find out more about these two European organizations, their differences and their complementarities, please visit our website, and you can see our website here on the screen. On the top left side of our homepage, you will find a heading saying the Council of Europe in brief. If you go there and click on the rubric, do not get confused. You will need to know everything about the differences between these two organizations. So the CFR is a Council of Europe publication, but the European Union adopted the CFR very quickly as a reference framework. A year after the publication of the CFR, thus already in 2002, the EU issued a resolution inviting the EU member states to set up systems of validation of language competences based on the CFR. A few years later, the European Commission decided to base its European indicator of language competences on the CFR. The results of the first survey for this indicator were published in 2012. The European Commission also supported many CFR-related projects, and even the European Parliament, which is part of the EU, published a report in 2013 on the implementation of the CFR in European education systems. Finally, the CFR, apart from being referred to in many national qualification frameworks, is also referred to in European qualification frameworks. As the oldest of the European organizations, the Council of Europe is the continent's leading human rights organization. All Council of Europe member states have signed up to the European Convention on Human Rights, a treaty designed to protect human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. The European Court of Human Rights is part of the Council of Europe. It was set up to rule on individual or state applications alleging violations of the civil and political rights set out in the Convention. In addition to this Convention on Human Rights, the Council of Europe promotes human rights through other conventions, such as, for example, the Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, and the Convention on Cybercrime, just to mention a few of them. It monitors member states' progress in these areas and makes recommendations through independent experts monitoring bodies. All Council of Europe member states have abolished the death penalty. One of the other conventions, and one of the first of them, was the European Cultural Convention, which states, among other things, that the Council of Europe member states should encourage their citizens to study the languages of other contracting parties of the other member states and promote the study of their language or languages in other member states in order to foster mutual understanding about pupils in Europe. It was in this context that the Council of Europe started its language programs in 1960. For nearly 50 years, its focus was on foreign and second language learning and teaching. Publications such as the threshold level for the English language, en niveau seuil for French, contextuele for German, drempelniveau for Dutch, niveau linéaire for Portuguese, Atalai-Zimaila for Basque are examples of the results of these programs. These publications present an operational model for the abilities which specific groups of learners require to use a language for independent communication. They specify for nearly 30 national or regional languages the knowledge and know-how required to attain this communication threshold. In this sense, the Council of Europe's work in the field of foreign second language education was a pioneer in competence-based learning, teaching, and assessment. In the 1970s and 80s, and until 1949, the Modern Language Section, which is now the Language Policy Unit, also organized a large number of workshops for teacher trainers, always hosted by the member states. They were not organized in Strasbourg. We went to the member states at their invitation. The innovative nature of the threshold level approach strongly influenced these workshops and consequently language learning and teaching across Europe. The communicative, action-oriented and task-based approach was generalized and language learning was no longer limited to the elites. In 1994, given the growing number of member states since the fall of the Berlin Wall and the growing interest in modern languages competences for all learners, the Council of Europe decided to create a center devoted to teacher training and innovation in the field of modern languages. The European Center for Modern Languages was thus created in Austria as a partial agreement. It is part of the Council of Europe, and my colleague Susanna Slivensky will tell you more about the aims and functioning of the ECML right after me. In 1994, the Modern Language Section thus handed language education practice over to the ECML and became the Language Policy Unit, focusing on language policies in education. In addition to coordinating projects focusing on language education policies for the member states in general, according to Council of Europe priorities, it offers individual member states if they so wish, assistance in reviewing their language education policies. This work has been done in 15 member states so far, or indeed also for some regions and even for one city, and is currently underway in Malta. Thus, the Council of Europe has two structures dealing with language education: the Language Policy Unit, LPU, and the ECML. In addition, the European Charter for Regional or Minority Languages is a legal instrument to protect these languages as cultural heritage. It is a legal instrument independent of the Education Department, even if an important part of the Charter is devoted to the role of education in maintaining and transmitting these languages. Getting back to the threshold level approach. As I said, this work was done in the years 70s and 80s for nearly 30 national or regional languages. For each of these languages, national or regional teams, with guidance from Council of Europe experts, specified the competences necessary to communicate independently in the language in question. Based on this large experience, the idea of a Common European Framework, or CFR, was launched in 1991, as well as the idea of a European Language Portfolio, or ELP, to bring the CFR approach right into the classroom. A large number of working parties with experts from many member states were organized in Strasbourg from 1993 until 1996 to develop the descriptive scheme, or the conceptual part of the CFR. The four authors, Dr. John Cream, Professor Daniel Cost, Dr. Brian North, and Mr. Joe Shields, were active members of these working parties. At the same time, and in close preparation, a research project on language competences was conducted by Dr. Brian North and Professor Günther Schneider with the support of the Swiss National Science Foundation and Eurocenters. After a long period concerning both the descriptive scheme and the illustrative descriptors of language competences, the CFR was launched in 2001, which happened to be the European Year of Languages. In the same year, the first validated European language portfolios were published. The portfolio is a pedagogic tool based on the CFR. Dr. David Leto, who worked a lot at the Council of Europe for the development and implementation of the ELP, will speak about the portfolio later today. I believe it is at 6 p.m. What the framework primarily gives its users is a common language. It is a common instrument which they can use to compare different options. After presenting several options for language learning, teaching, and assessments, the CFR contains many boxes inviting its users to consider all of them and then state which of them should suit their context and needs best. These boxes always start with the sentence, "Users of the framework may wish to consider and where appropriate state which of the options suit best to their context." So the CFR is clearly a reflection tool. It contains numerous adjustable parameters allowing policymakers and professionals to adapt it according to their specific needs. By now, the CFR exists in 39 languages. Now, what the framework is not. It is not a European standard, a kind of prescription or injection coming from a European institution somewhere in Brussels or Strasbourg, with context being forced to fit it. Nearly every week I receive emails from all over the world from people asking the Council of Europe to confirm that they are applying the CFR correctly. They wish to receive a certificate of approval and conformity. This does not make sense, because the CFR is not a standard to be applied rightly or wrongly. For this reason, we decided to organize a policy forum in 2007 on the CFR and the development of language policies, its challenges and responsibilities. The issue of responsibility in using a common reference framework was central to this policy forum, attended by many national representatives from 4 continents. As I said, the CFR is not a prescriptive document, and the Council of Europe is not a supranational body deciding on education policies for its member states. National, or sometimes regional governments, are entirely responsible for their education systems. But the Council of Europe provides a platform for cooperation among its member states, and policies are often developed through this cooperation. In the course of this forum in 2007, the participants increasingly began to speak in terms of sharing, co-responsibility, or horizontal cooperation. And they concluded that, rather than vis-à-vis the Council of Europe, it is towards one's own learners and one's European partners that one has a responsibility for making coherent, realistic use of the CFR. Following this policy forum, the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe addressed a recommendation to its member states on the use of the CFR, in which the responsibility of the member states and professionals is clearly underlined, and in which measures are recommended for different categories of professionals concerning the use of the CFR. You can see the reference of this recommendation on the screen. You can find it on our Language Policy Unit website, but also on the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe website, and if you Google it, you will find it straight away. In addition to the CFR, and to help different potential users, the Language Policy Unit produced an extensive toolkit. First of all, guides for different categories of users of the CFR: learners, teachers, teacher trainers, textbook developers, curriculum developers, examiners, those responsible for quality control, and so on. You will find guidelines to use the CFR for all these people in this guide. Then we have the European Language Portfolio with its guides for developing and using DLP, and a large data bank of descriptors. We also have material illustrating the CFR levels, DVDs and online samples of oral production in 5 languages calibrated against the 6 levels of the CFR, and a CD-ROM with reading and listening items, content analysis grids for speaking, writing, listening and reading materials. And we have a manual for test development and examining, and another one for relating language examinations to the CFR. Finally, we have this whole project for reference level descriptions for national or regional languages. This is a general name for work focusing on individual languages, specifying the can-do statements in concrete linguistic terms for different languages. The CFR levels have also been used by an increasing number of Council of Europe member states to define language policies related to the integration of adult migrants, some which include language courses and language tests. These tests are sometimes even applied before entry of citizens into a European country, and they are often compulsory for a residence permit or for citizenship. As the watchdog organization for human rights, democracy and the rule of law, the Council of Europe offers its support for its reference framework to be used for the benefit and inclusion of citizens, and not for exclusion, taking account of the specific needs and context of migrants. Therefore, the Language Policy Unit set up a project on the linguistic integration of adult migrants. In 2008, 2010 and 2013, surveys were conducted in member states on language policies for the integration of adult migrants, and several intergovernmental conferences were organized here in Strasbourg at the Council of Europe. The next one will take place in June and will deal with quality and values in policy and practice. In addition, the Language Policy Unit produced policy guidelines and an extensive set of thematic studies and tools for training and assessments. All these documents are freely available on a very rich, dedicated website. To finish, I would like to mention the incredible number of articles, theses and books that have been published about the use and impact of the CFR. If I were to mention only one, but you will find all the others on our website, or references to them, but if I were to mention only one, I would refer to a book by Michael Byram and Lynn Parmenter on the academic and policy impact of the CFR in Europe, Asia, South and North America. The title of this book is The CFR, The Globalization of Language Education Policy, published by Multilingual Matters in 2002. But there are many more texts on, for example, the practical use of the CFR and the ELP in the classroom, on its usefulness in higher education and for teacher training, on possible further research, on links with the Actifel guidelines, and so on. A large number of these documents are freely available and downloadable from our website. Others, we have links to them or reference to them. As a language policy unit, we did not stop working after the publication of the CFR. We further developed, for example, some of the fundamental CFR concepts, such as plurilingual and intercultural competences. They are present in several other projects and in two main policy guides. A guide for the development of language education policies in Europe, and a guide for the development and implementation of curricula for plurilingual and intercultural education. As I said, all these documents and tools produced by the Language Policy Unit are downloadable and free from this general website. But if you wish to go directly to the CFR, you just add a hyphen and you type CFR. If you wish to go to the ELP webpage, you add ELP, or to the platform of resources and references for plurilingual and intercultural education. It is just platform. The other one for migrants, which I have just mentioned, is also there. And what I did not have time to speak about is our autobiography for intercultural encounters. You will find more about this on our website. And finally, to finish, you will see our general email box. So if later on you wish to contact us, please feel free to do so. Thank you for listening, and I will be happy to respond to questions coming up from you later on. And I now will pass on the floor to Susanna, my colleague in Graz at ECML, Deputy Director of the ECML and Head of Programs. So, Susanna, the floor is yours. Bye-bye and good luck. Okay, can you hear me? It's all. I'm not sure. Okay. Hi, Johanna. Good morning. Thanks a lot for this very nice presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed.
Susanna?
Yeah?
Susanna, I'm afraid we don't see you as of yet.
Okay. Let's see. Is that okay now?
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, so I just continue. Many thanks, Johanna. This was a very, very nice introduction, actually, and an overview of what the Council of Europe has done with respect to the CFR. And it's my task now to introduce you to the activities of the European Centre for Modern Languages of the Council of Europe. What I would like to speak about is outlined here. I would briefly like to introduce you to the ECML, then focus on the ECML's role with regard to the CFR, and then point at a few activities of the ECML that are relevant in this context, and a few publications and ongoing projects, and a format that allows for ECML member states to request ECML training and consultancy for member states. And finally, I'm going to finish with 3 wishes, which seems to be the, I don't know, it looks like this is a conference where you can make wishes, so I will contribute to that. All right. So actually, I would like to start with a question to an audience of 110 people now, I understand. And my question would be, are you familiar with the ECML and its work? I understand that, yes, I can see that now. Heike is setting up this poll. Please indicate whether you've ever heard about the ECML, whether you know about our publications, or no idea at all. In the meantime, and I try to move over this, well, anyway, in the meantime, I will introduce you to what you can see here on the slide, hopefully.
You see the ECML premises. I now wonder if you can see it. Yeah. The ECML premises in Graz. This is where I'm sitting at the moment, the red building with the blue flag on front. And this is actually where the secretariat is located. We are a small team of 8 full-time staff. We welcome trainees and fellows on a regular basis, so this is also an invitation to consider coming to work with us in Graz on this occasion, maybe. Then underneath you see a picture of people, and this is workshop participants. This is how we actually work. We, on a regular basis, we welcome people, nominated experts from ECML member states, to come to Graz and to work on specific topics. And these are topics, work that is done within projects, and I will introduce you to the more formal framework of the work of the ECML in a moment. Now, as a result of this work of many people, as you can see here, and we are really talking about 32 countries here. 32 countries of the Council of Europe are member states of the ECML. So all the experience and expertise of the people coming from this broad range of backgrounds, linguistic, cultural, social, economic backgrounds, they contribute to the drafting of ECML publications. And here you see 2 examples, publications of the ECML. All our publications are available free for download from our website. So this is, I think, one of the unique ways of working and the unique ways of really presenting issues to the wider public. This is not the work of 2 or 3 people. This is really the inputs and insights of many people that is then put into a document, materials, publications for teachers and teacher trainers, and it's put at the disposal of everybody really who is interested and who can benefit from this experience. Now, I see that the logo of the European Day of Languages is actually missing, so please imagine the logo of the EDL. I think you are familiar with it anyway, because this is a big success, really, and it directly links up actually to the Council of Europe's activity in 2001, which was coordinated with the European Union, and that was the European Year for Languages. And as a follow-up, this European Day of Languages was created the 26th of September every year, and this is celebrated across Europe and beyond, I can say. We are aware of activities in Canada and in other countries. Together with the Language Policy Unit, and here I'm greeting Fidia Talbot, hello, the ECML is coordinating the European Day of Languages. Many activities are listed on our website on that occasion. It is also an invitation to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. ECML does have Facebook and Twitter. Now, somehow I missed the results of the poll, and therefore I'm not really sure how many of you are familiar with the work of the ECML. But, here's the logo. All right, now you see the logo of the EDL, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. Okay, so that's a nice result. There's still a third of our participants to whom the ECML is new. So the following is really for you. I will speak briefly about the ECML strategic objectives. So why do we need a European Centre for Modern Languages? What's its objective? We are here to help member states to implement effective language education policies and practices, and we do this by focusing on the practice of language learning and teaching. And this really shows in which way we are complementary to the work of our colleagues in Strasbourg. The Language Policy Unit obviously working on a policy level, and then the ECML trying to, let's say, bridge the gap between this policy level and practice in classroom. So our customers, so to speak, are really teachers, teacher trainers, teacher educators and language professionals working on the ground, working with learners or educators who are then going into classrooms, people designing curricula, people working on textbooks, etc. So we're here to support networks and research projects. And the final point mentioned here, to train multipliers, also gives an indication of how we work. Obviously, we cannot welcome everybody, every teacher in Graz. You've seen the building, there's limitations to how many people we can host here. So we are asking our national representatives to nominate experts to come to Graz. And these representatives from all the countries, they are supposed to act as multipliers. Now this may sound like a bizarre term. Are you a multiplier? Am I a multiplier? This is the expectation really is for people to come to Graz and then to go back to their national context, to go back and discuss the issues that were discussed in Graz, to make use of the expertise that was generated in Graz, and then to see in which way it can be adapted in national context, even in local context really, and how publications can be used to help moving things ahead. Right, now, this is an overview of our programs of activities. The ECML runs 4-year programs, focusing on specific topics and themes. 2004 to 2007, the title was Languages for Social Cohesion. And then 2008 to 2011, we had a program entitled Empowering Language Professionals, really with a focus on the teaching staff. And the current program title you see above, it's running 2012 to 2015, Learning Through Languages. Now just a few words about how this functions, how we are operating these programs. We have project teams. They come from 4 different member states, and they cooperate, and I've mentioned that, they cooperate with experts from all our member states. And as a result, they are providing and publishing training models, guidelines, examples of good practice for teacher educators or directly for teachers to use in classrooms within the institutions and for their networks. And all this, as mentioned, is published on our website. It's available free of charge, and it's there to be used. Right. Now, the current program, and we're in the 3rd year of our program, entitled Learning Through Languages, has a little subtitle, which I think is nice to use as a link to the CFR. The subtitle reads, Promoting Inclusive, Plurilingual and Intercultural Education. Just a brief reminder, there's the link to the website, and you're more than welcome to check out the program in more detail than I can present it here at the moment. Now, very briefly, the philosophy of the program. And this graphic was referred to by our web designer as the program burger. Now, it really encompasses all the ideas. In the upper part, you see the longer-term vision and our key target, which is the learner. And as you can see, the learner comes with very different backgrounds, be it majority or minority, be it a non-migrant or a migrant background, a speaker of a national, a regional, or a non-territorial language, learners with and without special needs. So it's really important to look at the diversity people, learners, bring with them into classrooms, into learning contexts. And this is where we are proposing a longer-term vision with regard to introducing quality education in order to really respond to the needs of the learner who comes into the learning context with, as I mentioned, a wide range of backgrounds. It's the vision of introducing quality education, which is based on a common understanding of what we're doing, with the need to be transparent about what we're doing, and thus we're proposing inclusive, plurilingual, and intercultural approaches. Underneath, the blue fields indicate our operation, so to speak. We have projects working or targeting the formal learning context, the schooling context, for example. Then we have a few projects targeting the informal and non-formal learning strand, and obviously we are aware of the fact that both strands really overlap to a great extent, but maybe they don't overlap from the teacher's perspective, and this is really an opportunity to consider how to make better use, even in formal learning contexts, of the informal, non-formal learning processes, because this is what the learner brings into classrooms. Now underneath you see a strand entitled Mediation, Implementation of the Vision. And this is, I will speak about this notion of mediation in a few minutes, just to introduce you to the fact that there's a few projects focusing on mediation, meaning focusing on the dissemination of ECML publications. And actually at the moment we do have such a workshop in Graz, a project team discussing ECML publications with relevant users in our member states. And secondly, there's ECML training and consultancy for member states, and again, I will speak about it in a minute. Now, these are the outcomes, the envisaged outcomes, the results that we hope to achieve as in 1 year time, in 2015. It's enhancing awareness of the value of plurilingual education. And here's just one notion which describes what we mean by plurilingual education. It's supposed to challenge monolingual attitudes. The idea that one classroom, one language, and maybe one target language in the foreign language classroom, which really indicates that we are excluding any other language that might be there, that might come with the learners who speak maybe other languages at home or outside the classroom. The inclusive education, we want to highlight the positive effects of inclusive education, responding to the diversity of the learners. And finally, an intercultural education, preparing learners to engage in intercultural dialogue. And even though these three strands are here listed one after another, again, it's clear that they are clearly interrelated, and there's a close link between all three areas. If you recall the program Burger, you probably understand what I mean. Now, coming to the CFR, and I now see that I've missed one poll question, and maybe we can introduce that now. Again, a question to you, to my audience. What is your professional background? Again, for me to better understand in which way my presentation might be relevant for you. Are you a language teacher? Are you a teacher of a subject other than languages? Are you a teacher trainer, researcher, policymaker? I actually do hope to have some of our governing board members amongst our presenters, because we've promoted this event with them. Okay, most of you are language teachers. That's good to know. That's good to hear. Thank you. All right. Now, coming back to the question, in which way are now these activities of the ECML related to the CFR? Again, you see involved the subtitle of the current program, Promoting Inclusive, Plurilingual and Intercultural Education. And underneath, you see things taken from the CFR directly. The CFR promotes plurilingualism in response to European linguistic and cultural diversity. And as a citation, the learner does not simply acquire two distinct, unrelated ways of acting and communicating. The language learner becomes plurilingual and develops interculturality. So I think this directly shows in which way our program is relevant with regard to the values of the CFR. And just mentioning or just pointing out that it's not only, in many cases, it's not only about two distinct languages, it's about many more languages that one learner brings with him or with her into the classroom, or within the classroom, there's usually more than two distinct languages present. Now, a second notion that I would like to very briefly introduce and related to the current program of the ECML A major educational effort is needed to convert diversity from a barrier to communication into a source of mutual enrichment and understanding. Now, this clearly relates, or I see a clear link to the inclusive educational approaches, since this is aimed at responding to the diversity of learners, and it's aiming at overcoming barriers of communication in order to better understand each other. And again, a citation from the CFR: the promotion of respect for the diversity of languages and of learning more than one foreign language in school is significant. Right. Now, a final mention about the link between ECML and CFR. I think it's a very, very clear link, and indeed I wouldn't be able to think of one project that does not really link up to the values of the CFR. Very briefly again, the mission of the ECML to support the implementation of language policies, remember the bridging the gap notion, and to promote innovative approaches to language learning and teaching. And I'd like to come back to a recommendation that Johanna has introduced to you, a recommendation of the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe on the use of the CFR. Council of Europe member states are invited to create conditions favorable to the use of the CFR as a tool for plurilingual education in such a way as to promote democratic citizenship, social cohesion, and intercultural dialogue. And I think with this, we are clearly situating ourselves within the core values of the Council of Europe, which is about democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Now, this is, again, just to clearly say that there is a very coherent and a very strong context in which the CFR is situated in, and the ECML is clearly, again, in the center of these developments. Now, to be a bit more practical, I would like to briefly introduce a few publications of the ECML. Publications, as I've mentioned, that you can find on the website, and I don't go into details of publications then carried out or published by David Little, Grete Nesbeda, José Noyons, Frank Haber, Claire Tadieu, and Michel Cadier, and others, because they will be presented in the program later on. Now, just very briefly, and I see that we will probably not have time to play a video that I was hoping to play. Just very briefly, a publication that will not be represented in this program. It's the Pathways Through Assessing Learning and Teaching in the CFR. It's a reflective tool which really is a very nice way of being introduced to the many different facets of the CFR. And just to give you one example of such a worksheet that comes with the publication, it clearly shows the relevant area that this particular workshop is introducing, plurilingual profiles and partial competences. It refers directly to the CFR, so you would know how to link it up to the CFR, and then it comes with a task, with a very concrete task that can be carried out in teacher training. So this, in a way, represents how ECML materials is presented. It's very practical. It can be used directly in teacher training, or it can be adapted, if need be, to specific contexts. Now, another publication, very briefly, and I'll do that quickly. It's the Guidelines for Task-Based University Language Testing. If you're into university language teaching, then this might be of interest for you. It clearly links up the tests carried out at university language centers, for example. It links them to the CFR, or helps drafting or conceptualizing tests, which can then be linked to the CFR. Again, this is an example of the publication. It comes with a checklist, so it's very practical, and it really helps people to develop this overall skill of using tests or drafting text in this context. Ongoing projects with the ECML, again, you see, this is just a selection. I'd like to highlight one particular project which is working on sign languages for professional purposes. And the project team is identifying descriptors from sign languages and then linking those descriptors to the CFR. They do this in order to help professionals in sign languages to really situate their competences with respect to language levels outlined in the CFR. So I think this will certainly be a big contribution to promoting sign languages overall, but also to promoting professionalism in this domain. Okay, then activities we are offering on a bilateral basis. Member states can request training from the ECML in their countries, and I'd like to highlight two offers. One comes for plurilingual intercultural competences, and another one for relating language examinations to the CFR. And I'd really like to use the opportunity to say hello to Michel Condelier, representing the first offer, and José Noyons, representing an expert representing the second offer. They really do a marvelous job. They are working very, very hard in order to support our member states, to support our partners in the countries, in order to move things forward with respect to these topics. Right, if I would have three wishes, this is the final part of my presentation, I would hope to be informed about innovative CFR projects. So for me, this is not only presenting to you, but also finding out from you where you work and which activities you're involved with, and what you think, what you consider relevant in order to look at interesting developments for the promotion of the CFR. I would like to be inspired by you, in particular on activities on a classroom level, and I would therefore hope to better understand the needs of the CFR users. I had a final question, and I wonder if it's not too late to put it to you, and the question was, actually two questions. Do you find ECML publications useful for making better use of the CFR? Looking at what I've just presented to you. Okay, thank you. And the second question was, where do you see the biggest need for further developments related to the CFR? So would it be in the learning domain, would it be for teachers, or would it more be related to the assessment? Okay, that is interesting as well. That is interesting to see. And I think it will have an implication on possibly on speakers coming in after me. Okay, with this, 5 minutes late, sorry for the delay. I'd like to hand over to the moderator. And again, I'm happy to be in touch with you.
Susanna, would it be okay if we just play the video just 1 more minute? 1 or 2 minutes? Do you think it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. It's an example of a publication that I've presented earlier, the pathways, with practical worksheets for how to find out what the CFR is about. It's many facets.
The Common European Framework is already 10 years old, but we think that practitioners are still not confident enough with these complex tools, and there is a partial implementation of the concepts, especially of the key concepts of this potentially very innovative tool. So our project focused on trying and giving the practitioners a tool for helping them to understand the main concepts of the Common European Framework, to become more aware of their own practice, to feel valued in their own practice, and to move a step further, like seeing how they could really implement these key concepts into their own practice. After working with an international team and trying and piloting parts of the final publication of our project into different contexts, we came out with a tool made up of two components: a guide to the essential of the Common European Framework, to the nitty-gritty of its philosophy, and a toolkit of over 100 worksheets, able to help teachers both grasp the conceptual density of the document.
Okay. Yes, I think this was a nice example, and Enrica Picardo, she is at the moment based in Toronto, in Canada. She gave a very nice and clear overview of what the publication is about and in which way it can be used. I can't hear you.
We can't hear you, I'm afraid. Marissa? Marissa, we can't hear you, I'm afraid.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
My microphone seems to be active. So thank you very much, Suzanne, and I'd like to say, if you have any questions for this presentation, would you like to put them in the text chat, and we will deal with them at 12 o'clock in the general Q&A session after the next presentation.